Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Alice Tang in for Tiffany Meyer. Our top story. As conflict escalates in the Middle East, who is the U.S.'s biggest adversary now? FBI Director Kash Patel weighs in.
The CCP is the adversary of our time, and anyone that says otherwise is being selfish or lying to you or looking for financial gain.
Flood zone. FBI Director Kash Patel is sounding the alarm on the Chinese Communist Party, calling it the adversary of our time. He made the remarks Monday while speaking to law enforcement leaders at the National Sheriff's Association conference in Florida.
The CCP is the adversary of our time, and anyone that says otherwise is being selfish or lying to you or looking for financial gain. That's a different calculation for those in Wall Street, but that's not my calculation, and I don't really care about it. But they are smart. They are partnering up with the Mexican drug cartels, with the Russians, with every adversary we have, and saying, look, we don't really like each other, but we just hate America, so why don't we team up? And you know what they did? They went to the north. And as we were discussing, while we've done such a great job through your work in this administration on the southern border, the northern border is too vast for the federal government to cover down on. It's impossible. We need you. You're the northern front.
With recent flare-up in Middle East tensions, U.S. defense leaders say the real long-term threat hasn't changed. Washington's top priority is still China. We spoke with retired U.S. Army Colonel John Mills, now a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy, for his insight on why China remains the top concern.
Well, I don't think the strike at the 3 nuclear plants in Iran in any way connotates a shift back to the Middle East. No way, shape, or form. The United States is a global power, and the Trump doctrine is clear. We're going to generate and project force around the world. I think it's clear Asia does have the priority, but temporarily we've had to shift some resources to address the 3 nuclear plants. They're gone, and now we can reassign forces and move forces back to the Pacific.
Fallout from Iran's nuclear losses could hit China hard. Analysts say Beijing's strategic and economic ties to Iran run deep, and those connections may now be in serious jeopardy.
You got to look at it this way. Iran is a chief ally, in fact, and even almost a more important ally to China than Russia. If the regime, and it looks like the regime is likely going to collapse in Iran, that means China's right flank collapses as they face America across the Pacific. So this is huge. It's a huge loss for China. China also loses 25% of their entire energy that they were buying at sub-market prices illegally through Iran. This is a huge loss for China.
Beijing's influence stretches well beyond Asia. Experts say China has built a network of allied states to challenge the West. but some of those ties may now be starting to crack.
China has a number of tributary states that are essentially their proxies for the worldwide fire that is ongoing caused by the Chinese Communist Party. Those countries are Russia, North Korea, Iran, which is about to fall out of the sphere of influence, it looks like, Venezuela, South Africa, and even Pakistan. I know the Pakistanis get a little upset about that, but they need to figure out which side they're on. So ultimately, when China looks at Russia, even though Russia would not exist right now if it wasn't for Chinese and Iranian support, in the long term, when China looks at Russia, they think of only one thing, and that's lunch. So Putin knows that. He's had to take and work as a Chinese tributary state to survive, but he knows in the long term that he's going to get consumed by the Chinese Communist Party. So he's trying to survive the short term to address the long term.
Experts say Washington's strategic shift to the Indo-Pacific, which began during Trump's first term, is likely here to stay. They say this pivot is a long-term move, one unlikely to be reversed by short-term distractions from the Israel-Iran crisis. Amid the ongoing crisis between Israel and Iran, one major player with deep ties to Tehran is watching closely: China. On Sunday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio urged the Chinese regime to encourage Iran not to close the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil passage. This raises a key question. Why is the U.S. turning to China for help? We take a closer look at Beijing's Middle East ties and core interests in the region. China, as the top buyer of Iranian oil, has extended a lifeline for Tehran's struggling economy. Despite U.S.'s sanctions, Beijing buys more than 90% of Iranian oil exports, accounting for roughly 12% of Iran's GDP. In return, China benefits from discounted oil prices. Iran is the second largest country in the Middle East. It joined China's Belt and Road Initiative in 2016, helping to expand China's influence in the region. In 2021, China and Iran signed a 25-year strategic pact covering economic, military, and security cooperation. China and Iran also hold regular military drills, deepening their strategic ties. The U.S. has long accused China of aiding Iran's nuclear program. This support dates back to the 1980s, when China allegedly helped build Iran's largest nuclear research center in Isfahan. China reportedly supplied Iran with materials and technology needed for nuclear weapons development. Brandon Weichart, senior national security editor at the National Interest, warned that if Iran acquires nuclear weapons, it could destabilize the region, threaten Israel and U.S. security, and trigger a nuclear arms race across the Middle East. A former senior U.S. intel officer says China and Russia view Iran's nuclear development as a way to weaken U.S. military power in the region, especially after sanctions on Russia over Ukraine. Many China analysts believe Beijing may see this as an opportunity to increase pressure on Taiwan, while the U.S. is more engaged in the Middle East conflicts. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. You can catch the full episode on Ganjing World every Tuesday. To watch, simply click the link in the description box below or search China in Focus at ganjingworld.com.